Hi, everyone. My name is Joseph Carson. I am your co-host for the 401 Access Tonight podcast. And today we have a very special episode. And it's our basically holiday episode. It's the one we're all meant to be merry and excited and leaving the 2020 behind us and the great 2021, which is ahead, which I hope is a very different year for everybody. I'm joined by my awesome co-host, Mike. Do you want to kind of give us your season's greetings?
Yeah, definitely. Mike Gruen, VP of Engineering and CISO here at Cybrary. Happy holidays, everyone, and very excited about today's episode. I feel like every episode's a very special episode, but whatever. They're all special in their own way. Today we'll be talking about where we sort of get our security news, what blogs we like to read, who we like to follow, maybe on Twitter or just in general, how Joe and I stay up to date. Spoiler: I depend mostly on Joe. But I'll let that come out as we go. No, definitely not entirely. We only talk every week, so I don't know why I would depend on you. Without further ado, I don't know, Joe, if you wanted to kick off with like maybe some of your favorite blogs or people you like talking to.
Absolutely. So one of the one, I guess the one that I probably tune into and read the most regularly is there's a podcast which is called Smashing Security. And it's from two awesome, co-hosts who's similar to ourselves, of course, one is Graham Cluley and Carell. And they do basically this awesome podcast, which comes out. And it's kind of similar to what we do. But I think one of the things I find about Graham's kind of approach is his humor and his laugh and the content that they cover. They cover a wide, broad perspective, and they also have a lot of guests on the show. So it's one that I tune into, and it's one that I kind of enjoy listening to, and it's one that I stay up to date. Mostly not getting into the detail of specific, security issues or incidents, or it's not very technical, but it is one that I really enjoy listening to. And then Graham also follows it up. He does this blog as well, which kind of for me gets into, and Graham's been in the industry as long as I have. He's been around for a long time. You hear him doing a lot of keynotes. He did one recently at ISC Squared. He's done a few keynotes in different major events. So he's very predominant security figure for a long time. He used to work a lot at Sophos, I believe, in the past. So that's one that I really enjoy. It's mostly because it brings the humor back. I like good old comedy. And I think, in a lot of things that we do, I think it's good to have it in the security because it's one that, it's the one that keeps us, motivated. It's the one that keeps us laughing. So that's one that I like. So I don't know, Mike, have you ever heard of Graham or Smashing Security or his blogs at all?
Yes, definitely. I've heard of them. I think I've read a couple. It's one of those, again, not a huge reader. So it's always nice to hear from other people what they like reading. A lot of times what ends up happening for me is I'll get a link and I'll, it'll be to somebody's blog on a specific article, and then I'll sort of go from there. But yeah, definitely heard of them. It's some funny stuff at times. Yeah.
Yeah. And another one that's is quite common, and it's the one that we all don't want to be in, which is, of course, Brian Krebs. So Krebs on Security is another one that it's not one that I kind of do regularly, but when he does post, when he does do updates, it's not very frequent. It's usually, every few weeks or, maybe once or twice a month, he does provide these updates. And definitely every, when there's a major patch Tuesday that comes out, he does provide those major security kind of updates. So, but it's the one that you read because it's always the one when it's a term that I find funny. I was trying to translate it in Estonian recently, which I referred to as kakatulik. And everyone kind of started laughing. And what it means is kakatulik is my translation of when the shit hits the fan. That's right. Typically when it comes out in Brian's blog is when the shit hits the fan, literally. And it's usually either looking into cases or incidents or breaches. So for me, I like Brian's journalism approach. Of course, it's not the one you want to be in. It's definitely people say don't Krebs me. So that's another one that I do find I enjoy reading because he takes you through his story. He does a story approach. He takes you through a journey, and he does get into some technical detail. So it's for me, Krebs on Security, and Brian, keep up the amazing work. Looking forward to seeing you, and hopefully, I'll follow you up if you're not listening to our podcast. And at some point we will have Brian on the show. But Brian's definitely another one that I do follow, do read up in his blogs, do follow him on social. And his approach to his journalism is fantastic.
So when you're let's say I'm new to the industry and trying to find people to follow. What would you say are the important things to try and figure out who's like a really credible, somebody who you really want to make sure you're following and paying attention to versus someone who might be overinflating things or maybe not the best. I don't want to say dishonest in any way, just not necessarily its credible source.
Mm-hmm. There's so many out there. I think one of the things that I find is, there's a great community on Twitter of security, enthusiasts, they're analysts, they're in behavior side. There's a lot of new people getting into the industry as well. So there's a lot of people, that I do follow. One that I follow is one person who got me industry, and he's still my mentor, and I still look at his feeds, and still he's also his very good Irish humor. So he's Brian Honan. He was my manager 20 years ago, and really got me where, I was doing security as a part-time thing. It was like something that I was responsible for, something I was participating in. But he was the one that really changed me as focusing on as a dedicated career. So there's people in the industry that, he's definitely one that I do see and I follow and read his every tweet, look at his messages, follow his kind of thought leadership. So definitely, I think there's many out there, definitely in the Twitter, you do follow me and then look at who I follow. That's definitely the way to kind of, I do follow those people who are honest and who are very direct, and think along the same lines, because ultimately, I hate when I do see people in the industry blaming other people or calling out other people. There's a lot of trolling in the industry as well. And those are the ones you want to avoid. So that does happen. But there's people out there. Jessica Barker, who will be on a future episode, I believe.
Yep.
And there's others as well that I do follow. Deviant as well. You got Reboot out there. You got Lan Coldwater or Ian Coldwater. So there's many out there that I do follow. I think that's I always forget this. The Purple Security as well. So those are there's a lot of people I do follow, and I do trust their judgment and I trust their feedback. Don't always agree with it, but it's something that it's very educational and they're very honest. So those are kind of what I recommend.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's important you sort of find one or two that are credible, right? See, as you pointed out, see who they follow. The cool thing about our industry, it's there's a lot of people that we all know each other. We talk to each other. There's it's definitely a more cooperative type industry than some others. So a lot of connections there, and I totally agree. Sort of find a group of people and see who they follow and who are they reposting and so on and so forth, and you can sort of go from there.
Absolutely. And we there's a group of us as well. I think some of the guys, was it Sean Martin and Marco, who does the ITSP magazine. They have also, getting connected with them. They do basically a lot of great content, to do a lot of podcasts, a lot of video shows. They follow a lot of the major security events globally. And they've introduced to me some amazing people like Dan Kelly. You've got Shan John, who's from both those are from Microsoft in the security team, and they do introduce you a lot of fantastic people. And so following even them and listening to some of the shows and some of the guests they have on, and it's really great as well. They also periodically had these season specials. And just recently, we also got together for all of the hosts, everyone who's appeared on the shows. We all got together and we had our basically Christmas, holiday chat, which is always great, because one thing in 2020 has been very difficult because that lack of in-person, the lack of interactive, the lack of networking, which meant that digital has been our only mechanism of getting the news and staying connected. So getting into the video calls and doing the chats and Zoom parties and stuff has been a great way to stay connected. And it's definitely for me, who's very remote and based in Tallinn, Estonia, that's my way of really keeping connected and staying social in the community as well.
Yeah, I think that's actually brings up a really good point. And before the show, we were sort of talking a little bit about what we wanted to talk about today. But one thing we didn't talk about at all was the industry events, whether it's Black Hat or whatever. There's a bunch of them. They had to go virtual this last year. But I would say that that is where I've found more people than anywhere else, is sort of go to those events, whether it's virtual or in person, attend, various sessions, listen to what people are saying. And then you can almost immediately pick up like who really knows what they're talking about and who's a good presenter and who's somebody you want to really be interested in. And then you just sort of, you can go from there. And I think those events are great events for anyone of any level to go to and interact with people. Everyone's happy to talk to you, whether they're the speaker or just someone else attending. Really just great environments to sort of network and meet people and find out more and learn more sources.
Absolutely. I mean, that's my calendar for the year. Absolutely. Normally it starts off the year. You got RSA, which is typically kind of one of the big kickoffs of the year. Of course, next year.
Although we can blame RSA for the COVID infection in the United States, I think is where I know that's where some of our employees picked it up. We're not going to blame RSA, obviously. It's a great event, but yeah, I think that it
happens when you bring a lot of people together.
Together from around the world, things happen.
But absolutely, I mean, it's typically one of the big kickoffs of the year. Of course, next year it's went virtual, so there will not be an in-person RSA next year, at least the North American one. But it would have been one that I would have went to, and definitely one thing I'd recommend for the audience to follow me on I do release typically for the major events throughout the year. What I do is, since I attend the events and I go to a lot of the sessions, I go through the agenda in detail and I look to see. First of all, I check to see who's speaking, and then I find out what topics they're talking about. So even looking at Sean Metcalf, which I love, really kind of going to his sessions when he's talking about Active Directory and exploiting AD and Azure and so forth. So I really do look through those agendas and I look for the people that I know are great speakers.
Yeah, absolutely. Always, that was the first lesson I learned the first time I went to, I can't remember, it was probably Black Hat, was I went with a friend and he was like, look at who the speaker is, and that's more important than necessarily the topic. And I remember one of the best talks I went to was on car hacking, and all of my takeaways from that, and how even at that time, even though I wasn't, just what they were talking about, OT wasn't really something it wasn't part of my life. It's not something that really matters to me from a security job perspective, but the takeaways of how to actually secure similar systems, and so there's always something applicable. So it's always worthwhile to listen to a speaker of interest as opposed to, or a speaker of who's a very good presenter and knowledgeable in their field, because there's always takeaways that are applicable to you.
That's the first thing. And I always say is when you're going to events such as the big trade shows like RSA and Black Hat and DEF CON, is look at the agenda and look at the speakers. You want it. That's how I build my agenda, is going through the speakers first. And then once I filled it out, and then I go through, okay, what's the subjects I need to attend? So then I go through it with, filling it up with the ones that have a specific interest in. And then once I've done that, then I add the fillers. It could be networking, it could be other things, but that's typically how I do. And I do release a blog of here's the sessions not to miss, so that people have a plan, people are ready when they go to the events. So it usually typically follows up. I do go to InfoSec Europe, which the sessions, InfoSec Europe is more of a meetup, a networking event, and there's a lot of side shows. That's why they do the Security Blogger of the Year Award and the Security Podcast of the Year Award and Professional of the Year Award. So that's where we kind of go for our social activities. And then shortly after that, of course, is the Black Hat and the DEF CON. I enjoy Black Hat. The sessions are okay, but where I do learn the most is going to DEF CON, because it's kind of like, it's like behind the scenes. It's here's how we did it. Here's the findings. So DEF CON is really where I like to go and hang out and network, and also get my advice from. So those are kind of some of the major things that throughout the year. And I definitely recommend, if you do get the opportunity, hopefully they do come back. And Black Hat and DEF CON, I hear, is going to be a hybrid event in 2021. But we need the shows to come back, because that's where the collaboration, communication, and networking happens. Not so much the event itself and the sessions,
right? But
it's where you get introduced to really amazing people.
Yeah, it's funny how important the in-person part of that is. I've attended plenty virtually or whatever, and as good as those are, they're just not quite the, you can't just walk up to some of them try and do various things to make it a little bit more accessible, beyond just attending the session. but it's definitely tricky. And I think the in-person aspect is an important one. And just hanging out with people and talking and just, learning what you can. Very important stuff.
Yeah. And then another one is great is the ISC Squared Security Congress, which typically kind of happens towards the end of the year, usually in Florida, around the October, November time. But for me, the problem I've had, so I've attended all of those events this year virtually.
Mm-hmm.
And the problem I have is that there's one thing about going to the in-person event, because then when you're there, you're in the same time zone.
There's that too.
Attending virtual, for example, ISC Squared and Black Hat, I was probably starting my sessions 9 p.m. in the evening, and they would go on to maybe 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. And I did try to balance it, because the good thing is some of the shows did actually have the recordings of some sessions. So it allowed me to next day, so I didn't have to stay up really late. Next day I'd be watching a day behind everyone else.
Mm-hmm. So I sort of took us, off into the left there on, in terms of trade shows and things like that. I think, just sort of reading other places, worthwhile to get your news. I do a lot with aggregators and whether it's Hacker News or Reddit or wherever. That's where some of the things like, I read come through. I think dark reading is another good one where it's not an aggregator, obviously, but where there's good stories and things like that. Any places, aside from blogs and people to follow, where else do you sort of get your news?
Absolutely. And dark reading is definitely one of the kind of popular places I would go to. Hacker News is another one. It's an aggregator of other feeds and stuff. Yeah. But I do like it gets into a little bit more technical detail sometimes. Yep. Threat posts.
Sometimes on Hacker News, I will say you have to be. That's one of those places where you really have to, put on your brain and like pay attention to what the source is, and because it's an aggregator, right? So you have to be. Absolutely. It's a little more up to you to filter that news.
Absolutely. So threat posts as well is another one similar to that. So those are the places I would kind of go to, and of course there's Naked Security, which is the old Sophos location. I don't know what's going to happen to it, with all of the changes that's happening there. I do hope that stays on, because it was also a great source of, it really just kind of uncovered, behind the scenes of security. It really took back and got the raw content without really pushing too much opinion. So that was another great location that I would look into. So definitely, threat posts, dark reading, Hacker News are great sources, but you do have to really go and look into them in detail and try and, decipher what is of interest. But one I do really like is, as well as the Sophos, which is the Naked Security kind of site as well. That's another good one that I go to and get information from. So, but there's many out there. There's Bruce Snyder's blog, Snyder. Right. That's another great one that goes a bit more into encryption and the security in general type of thing.
Yep, and that's I read a lot of. I think we talked about books, and I think that was he's just a great, obvious person to follow and read all of his work, and I couldn't agree more there.
Yeah. Another one that I've done, one that has probably been the longest that I've probably followed, is a guy called Steve Gibson. So it's Gibson Security. He's been doing it for a long time. And the reason why is, I worked on an incident that he also worked on back in early 2001, 2002, which was the grc.com attack, which is Gibson Research. And so he's been kind of probably one of the longest I've been following in the security industry. So his insights and direction and all his fun podcasts as well.
Yep. And I think I'd be remiss if I didn't at least plug Cybrary a little bit here in terms of, we have on our podcasts, whether it's this one or other ones that we do, we have lots of leaders in the industry come on. I would highly recommend, just sort of looking through, if you're I think my producers probably would want me to say, listen to all of our podcasts, but even if you don't listen, look and see who comes on. And those are usually industry leaders or people in emerging technologies, and worthwhile looking into and seeing, maybe they have a blog. I know Huntress, for example, is a good friend of ours. They do a lot. There's a lot that they put out that's worth listening to and reading and so on and so forth. So definitely Cybrary is a good source.
Yes. Yeah, some great guests. Chris Quebec is always fun to chat with.
Yeah, she's one of our favorite guests. Yep.
And Josh as well. So getting them on, and we've had them on our podcast as well. And it's always great to have really fun, very, the experts in their field. So when they come on, they have a lot of value to add. So really excited, some amazing. And I do. So one of the kind of the mediums I use for my podcast, typically on my phone, it tends to be Apple Podcasts, where I basically do the subscriptions. So that's probably where I get the feed from. That's coming in from the likes of Smashing Security, for Cybrary, and this podcast, and all the others as well. That's kind of my aggregator, and including Cybrary. So that's kind of the theme. But I have started recently moving a bit more to Spotify podcasts when they started kind of separating it out. So that's another place where I've started kind of using to listen to. I tend to do it when I'm commuting back and forward, or when I'm going for a walk to catch up on some of these feeds.
Absolutely. Cool. Any other, sort of, I mean, I feel like we've recorded a fair bit. I mean, I think we've
I think
that's a bunch.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, those are the main mediums. It's it's the big trade shows where we catch up, we grab a drink, we network, and we talk about what's been happening. Mm-hmm. That's really where the in-person. That's where you make the real connections. The blogs are really good for just that, continuous, staying up to date. The news articles just keeps you connected in the industry about what's trends are happening. And then definitely social, Twitter, LinkedIn, it definitely helps you make some great personal connections out there as well. And definitely the podcast, I do find that the podcast is probably where the entertainment comes from, because, listening to a lot of the jokes and listening to it keeps the security entertaining. Yes. And that's what we definitely need more of. So I think we've really covered. I think, we've given the audience a pretty good indication of where we get our news from. Mm-hmm. And hopefully that they will, be able to, go out and look out and stay up to date and follow some of the people we follow, because they are the experts in the field. They're the ones that we tend to trust their judgment and sources and advice and direction from. Many of them are mentors to me. So I think, this is really kind of, I think going into 2021, really kind of, let's make some new connections. Let's try to make sure we make security positive. And let's put 2020 behind us. And let's make an exciting year. Let's make security usable. Let's make it happy. Let's get new. I think we really definitely need a lot of new talent in the industry to come in and really help us solve the major problem, because security is hard. But it is important. It's something that we definitely need to get a lot more people interested in doing, because we definitely need to protect people out there, online, whatever they're doing, whether it being shopping, communicating, or even working. We do need to make sure that they stay safe.
Absolutely. And one of the other things that occurred to me while you're talking that I've taken to doing over the last, I'd say 9 months or so, and I'm in a unique situation, I think, than, but you can find yourself in the same way where, I'm buying software for Cybrary to use, obviously. And whenever I have the opportunity to sort of parlay that into a connection with their security team, whatever company it is, or their CISO, I try and do that. I try and get connected to someone over there, just because I think that networking, that, hey, we're all in this together. I found that everybody's very open to that, just to making that connection, being like, hey, is there someone on the security team? Try and find that peer. Obviously, if you're entry level, you're going to have a hard time getting the CISO's ear, right? Like, let's be realistic. But at the same time, like, take that opportunity to try and make a connection to other people at these companies. If you're working with other companies, meet their security team and try and interact with them. I think. The nice thing about the internet now is we can actually stay connected and get connected, and there's no reason not to take advantage of that. So I'd also encourage that as well. If you're doing business with Cybrary, feel free, reach out, say, hey, I'd like to talk to Mike and just get connected and see what's going on. I'm always happy to chat with people.
Yeah, absolutely. It's the same with Thycotic as well. A lot of people reach out and they want that connection, because they want to have first-hand connections with the source of information. I create a lot of the content, and they want to kind of get behind the scenes of the content in many cases. So it's always a good way to get that connection. So absolutely, I think this is another fun discussion. And happy holidays.
Happy holidays to you as well.
Hopefully everyone got to spend some time with their family over the holidays and not in isolation. Hopefully we can put 2020 behind us, and let's make 2021 awesome. So Mike, it's awesome as always to chat with you. And always looking forward to more chats in the future. And everyone out there, thanks for watching. Thanks for listening to 401 Access Denied. Stay safe. Keep watching. Keep listening. And we are looking forward to keeping you entertained moving forward. So always subscribe, keep connected. Reach out to us directly as well on social. And let's keep this community going. It's growing and growing. And we're excited about the future. Thank you.